Hey there YouTube, Ninja Nick 333, and happy birthday Kaijudo. It was 1 year ago today when the Tetsurion vs. Razorkender battle decks first were sold in stores. Now I remember 1 year ago being first introduced to Kaijudo the day before it actually was released. My friend Alex thought that Kaijudo was going to be the next big thing. He's like, man, this game is so awesome. And since he works at Kerwin's Game Store, he was allowed to purchase the battle decks the night before they actually came out. So, he really wanted someone to play with because he's like, man, this is so cool. You really got to try it. And I'm like, okay, I'll try it. So, I ended up picking up one of the decks. He wanted to do the Fire Nature deck. So I'm like, okay. You bought it. You choose which deck you're gonna play. So I got the blue-purple, or as we now know, blurple deck with the Razorkender. So, at first, I was having a real tough time learning how to play the game. So he's like, this is what you do this, and so you can draw, you don't draw if you go first, but you draw if you go second, and you always untap, then draw, then you charge mana, and anything can be mana, and blah blah. And I'm like, okay, this kind of makes sense. And I was making some like bad plays. Like it would always be the next turn. I'd be like, oh, I shouldn't put Frogzuka in mana. I should have summoned it because he's got all these creatures that aren't gonna be as powerful as frickin' Frogzuka. So then of course I draw Frogzuka the next turn, so it didn't even matter. But I'm looking, and he summons Gatling's, was it the Gatling Sky Terror or whatever, and he summons Super Bazooka Volcanodon and Bronze Arm Tribe, and I'm like, Duel Masters? Really? This is Duel Masters? Just re-released? Because it like failed the first time? Because I just recognized the art, especially from Bronze Arm Tribe and Super Bazooka Volcanodon, and a little from the Gatling Sky Terror. Because I had only played the original two-player starter set of Duel Masters, and I really couldn't get into it because the summoning sickness was something I couldn't really grasp because I was really only a Yu-Gi-Oh player at that time. But the second it clicked that it was Duel Masters, I knew exactly what I was doing, and I beat his face. So then he's like, okay, best 2 out of 3. Beat his face again. He couldn't even stand a chance. But the thing was, he was still having fun, even though he lost, which is not what a Yu-Gi-Oh player does. A Yu-Gi-Oh player only has fun if they go undefeated. So I just thought it was amazing. I'm like, okay. So I came back the next day and I'm like, I am buying everything Kaijudo you have. So they had the Tetsurion vs. Razorkender decks, which was really all they had. And I bought that and I went home and I'm like, okay. It's like whenever it was that the Dojo edition and Bull Rush deck came out, I got those immediately, and I'm like, this is so cool. And I'm like, they put Heel Flame the Assaulter in the deck? My God! Like, because he was like one of the best cards back then. He's still pretty great. But, I mean, over time, Kaijudo did start getting bigger and bigger. We actually started having tournaments probably a month after. I had tried to teach my friend Tyler, or Mr. Dude 002 on YouTube, how to play Kaijudo. And he was having a tough time learning how to pick up the game too. And then I'm like, he's like, oh, this doesn't make any sense. It's not really like any other card game that we've played. It's not exactly like Magic. It's not exactly like Yu-Gi-Oh. It's not exactly like Pokemon. It's like, I'm like, have you heard of Duel Masters? He's like, my God, this is Duel Masters! And then he proceeded to beat my face in. So that's what I got for that. So then he got really into it. The first, our local store was doing some sort of charity event kind of thing, where they charity games day kind of thing. and they had a Kaijudo tournament during it. And they had a pretty decent turnout. They had like 8 people. And that was the first Kaijudo tournament they ever did. I happened to not be there that day. I didn't know it was happening. I would have definitely went if I knew there was a Kaijudo tournament that day. But Tyler went, I don't remember if he went undefeated, but he definitely won. They played Swiss, and yeah, the store owner was like so happy with him. He's like, here, you get the playmat that says champion on it. He's like, oh, sweet. Which had since been stolen by some other Magic player that's there. But that's okay. He spilled Yoo-hoo all over it, so it was ruined anyway. But we started having like actual like regularly weekly tournaments even before the organized play was actually announced. We were all waiting for it, and it's like, well, what do we do? It's like, okay, we were doing it by the pairings by hand originally, and then like the tiebreakers were getting too confusing, and this one idiot guy was complaining a lot because he was supposed to be topping, but he wasn't because he had bad tiebreakers, and he didn't trust it. So we put it through the Pokemon system, and it ended up working out, I guess. By the time Evo Fury came out was when we really started getting a lot of people. We ended up getting 12 to 14 people a week, which we have not since been able to recuperate. Evo Fury really changed the game. We had the Laser Arm Dracon and the Blast Forge Captain and Bronze Arm Sabretooth, and everybody was playing Evo decks. Our friend Greg, he decided to pick up Kaijudo. He really liked it. Same story as me. He learned how to play from Alex, but he didn't play Duel Masters before, so he didn't know anything about it. But he decided to play full mono blue. Problem with his deck, though, it was like it's 3 Horikas. The only finishers were Neuron and Axon, and it's like all the deck did was draw. He'd have 3 Horikas out and Neuron, and wonder why he loses the second his Neuron's blown blades. So he ended up quitting, selling all his stuff, going to Vanguard, bashing our game. Eventually he stopped playing Vanguard and he stopped bashing our game, and it's all good now. But it really was just because of the whole Bone Blades kind of scenario, and that the deck really just drew too much, because he had half of his deck in his hand at one point. He had 20 plus card hands. But the thing was, there was no answers in his hand or enough mana to play if he did play the stuff, if he did have answers. So that was the whole problem with that. So we ended up losing one of our better players, and that gave us a hit. But we were still going up to like the 14 people. So it's like, okay, we've got people from Magic, we've got people from Yu-Gi-Oh! It's really picking up. But then what happened is Dragon Strike came out. Now, Dragon Strike completely obliterated our meta, because with Evo Fury and Rise, we could just, and Dojo Edition, we could just build whatever deck we want, and it would be competitive. But with Dragon Strike, you had to play dragons, and the thing was, none of us could figure out how to play dragons at first. Like, I knew you had to play Lux, and like you needed Andromedas, and nobody had Andromedas at first, and then we started pulling them like crazy because we were always topping anyway. But we couldn't really get a good dragon deck together. Eventually Tyler made a mono light deck with, you know, the Andromedas, Lyras, Lux, whatever. So he was beating everybody's face. What he would do is he would just wait until he had enough, until he had like up to like 10 shield breaks that he could do in one turn, so then he'd attack for game, just to make sure he wasn't effed up by a shield blast. So he was doing that, pissing everybody off, and he was winning like crazy. I was like, okay, I think I know how to do this. The most powerful dragons are the armored dragons from the Fire Civilization, so I'm gonna play Fire. You need Bottle of Wishes, because Bottle of Wishes gets out these big powerful guys for free. And you need Light, because Andromedas and Lux and Lyra are cards, and Stormspark Blast. So, thus Fire, Water, Light was invented. At least, I thought. I'm sure there were people before me who had thought of the deck before me and had better builds before me too, but the whole, like, meta hadn't actually like gotten to YouTube yet because the KMCs hadn't happened yet. So I built the Firewater Light deck. So I would be doing like, I'd have Nyx on the field, and I'd summon Hyperspeed. I'd have like Lux. I'd have Lux and 2 Nyx, and I'd summon Hyperspeed, draw 2, summon Herald, draw 2, Spark Cage their guy, so that Herald would attack and kill it, and then I'd get to summon Andromeda from my hand, get 2 shields, like that kind of stuff. And I obliterated Tyler's Mono Light. He was really pissed. So then he decided to make a deck just to counter my deck. So thus was invented Water Dark Light. And again, I'm sure somebody somewhere at some other locals invented it before us and had a better build before us. But I mean, to me, these were the first 2 times we'd ever seen these decks, because we created them, because there was no meta yet. There was no YouTube, there was no KMCs, there was no way to see what other people really had, because not many people were posting like deck lists that were actually like really great on the Kaijudo dojo on Facebook yet. So Tyler was like, if I put in darkness instead of the fire, I can have answers to anything that I play. So obviously he destroyed me, because then I have no removal. He has all this removal. So I'd summon Andromeda, he'd get rid of it. I'd summon Furnace, he'd get rid of it. He'd attack with, Andromeda and crap and beat me. So then I was upset. But I kept at it. I kept trying to figure out other ways, and eventually I just got tired of it. I'm like, after a couple weeks, I was like, there was no answers. I'm putting in darkness. So I made Water Dark Light. Mine wasn't as good as Tyler's in the end, and then the KMCs were announced, and we were told that Poughkeepsie was one of the first KMCs really to happen. So a couple weeks before that, we prepared, and as you've seen on this channel, if you have seen videos before, that we went there to Dragon's Den in Poughkeepsie to see what the competition would be like. Nobody was there. No locals were there. Just the 4 of us that went up. Trevor, who has the long hair, he went on the dojo and was posting about how nobody showed up to Dragon's Den, so there's no competition to be heard of, so nothing to prepare for. Aiden Thorne happened to notice it and say, oh, you should come by Champions, we just had a tournament the day before, and we might be able to do something tomorrow on the Sunday, so you should go on up and check it. It's only a few miles away. It was exactly 3 miles away. That's what the GPS told me, at least. It really was just like a loop around and then you're there. And it's a lot nicer than Dragon's Den, because the stuff isn't overpriced. They actually have like boxes of Kaijudo for like $60. They're really nice guys there, and they've got a decent amount of space, definitely. Not as much as our personal locals, but way more than Dragon's Den has. And it's really nice there. I mean, you got like sleeves and cards, and I don't really have much of Kaijudo singles, but I mean, it's still new, so so next day we met up with Aiden, and he happened to be playing Water Dark Light just like Tyler. So I'm like, is this meta? Because Aiden Thorne's supposed to be like one of the better Kaijudo players, because he writes for the ARG and for Kaijudo.com, so he knows what he's talking about, at least. Definitely. So he and Tyler were playing. Well, I happened to face him first, and I was obliterated. It was just no contest at all. Like, he skull shattered me, and he Andromeda'd, and he had Andromeda'd, and he had Luxes all over the place, and Lyras, and ugh, still have nightmares. But Tyler faced him. So Water Dark Light mirror match. And Tyler was really close to winning, but just he wasn't really quite there. He was a little unlucky. He did get a really bad hand. He got like all these low drop things. He never even drew into anything real decent. So he got his butt whooped. So it was like, oh man, that sucks. Next week we go there. He has his deck built a little better, a little closer to what Aiden even had, and plays, and he would have won that match that next week, but he made the bad play of re-summoning that Andromeda that was bounced, which led to him decking out. So he was very upset with that. Then on our way back home, I think that day, or something like that, we had found out about Infernus the Immolator. He was announced for Clash. They had the big like poster board one of him, like the full sheet when they first announced it at that one first KMC or whatever. We were honestly upset because it seemed way too broken. Obviously now, since it's been place tested and stuff, it's a really good card, but it's not impossible to get around. But at the time, we thought it's impossible to get around. There's not going to be any answers for it, which there were quite a few, like Mesmerize, that were even printed in Clash that get around it. But we were really worried about the whole game state as a whole. So, and we're like, this is just becoming just like Yu-Gi-Oh!, where they're just going to keep printing even more broken stuff just so that you keep buying. Because that's what Yu-Gi-Oh! Does. It's like, in order to play, you have to have the newest deck because the newest deck is the most broken. And thus then you win. But thankfully it didn't turn out that way. Tyler was very upset that it actually was confirmed to be real, so he quit. He quit because of that and because of losing to Aiden twice. Which really, I mean, it's like you're going against really one of the best players. And to be able to do that good makes you one of the best players, really. But he didn't want like that, and he quit. So basically, he brought like 4 to 5 people every week with him, like his girlfriend, some of his friends, a bunch of his friends that are borrowing cards from him. So him quitting made all of them quit, which then made it so there was no more Kaijudo locals anymore. That next week was the KMC in Poughkeepsie. I went anyway, and I had fun. The thing was, Tyler still had some of my Water Dark Light stuff. I wanted to play Water Dark Light, but I couldn't. So I'm like, you know what? I probably wouldn't win with the build I would have anyway, because I don't have the stuff to make it the most competitive I possibly can. Like Skull Shatter. I didn't have Skull Shatters or anything. So, and I only had like 2 Crystal Memories and not 3. So I'm like, okay, let's just play something fun. And I made the Shining Saber Bolt, and I have that profiled. And I just had a good time. I got 35th out of 71. Nothing to complain at. I wish I could have at least gone positive, because I went negative. I was like 3-4, I think. But every single match that I won and lost, every single match, was really close. So I have no complaints. If the games are all going to be that close, I mean, everybody was really good. And that's just with a fun deck. So, if I had brought my Water Dark Light that I wanted to, I probably would have gotten like top 32, maybe, instead of 35th. Maybe even top 16. Not that it would have even mattered, because you don't get an invite unless you're first or second anyway. But, who cares? I had fun. It was great. Tyler decided to come back into Kaijudo because I told him, I'm like, this is the one game that you're best at. So why are you quitting this when you can't win? And he's like, oh, shit. Like, things were making sense, and I had done a couple weeks of convincing, and he finally got back in. He's like, well, I sold my Andromedas. I have to get Andromedas. He still needs to get Andromedas. But I think he has like 1 or 2. But he's back in now. Ended up getting, like, his mom didn't want him going out of state because he's like under 18, which I understand. And then he ended up getting grounded, so he couldn't go to Massachusetts. But it ended up being really, really sucky because what was it? The week before I wanted to go and play test, but I had to go to a 100th birthday. hear the same story be told over and over and over, and have a woman be kissing all these men and go, "Who are you? I don't recognize you." That's because you need cataract surgery, woman. And then you tell her something and she can't hear you because she's freaking deaf and she needs hearing aids. But anyway, and then the next week was actually the Massachusetts KMC. I almost went, but my mom called me and she said one of her cats might be dying, and I was like really upset because it's like she has 2 cats that are part of a quadruplet set, and the one of them has had like heart problems all the time, and the other one that was always been completely healthy is the one who was going into kidney failure. So I was definitely not happy with that, and the thing's a sweetheart, she really is. And I went up to Troy, New York to do it, and as far as I know, I haven't heard anything since that weekend, but she had come home and she was doing really well, and I haven't heard anything since then, but I assume no news is good news. But anyway, I had to miss the Massachusetts KMC. I wasn't too upset. If I did go, I would have had a very similar deck to the types of Water Dark Lights that have been winning the KMC since Clash came out. Because I had made a trial version, figured out what was not working, fixed it up a little bit, and then, like, I don't know, a couple days after I fixed it up, I saw Aiden's list, and I'm like, this is like, I don't know, 10 cards off, or no, like 6 cards off or something. So I added in a second Tritonus, and I think 1 or 2 other things. I probably would have done well. I don't know if I would have gotten like top 2 or anything at Massachusetts, but I would have done well. And that profile is going to be up tomorrow or the next, no, probably in 2 days or something. And it's really fun. I'd rather not be exactly like everybody else, but I'm glad that I could at least think off the top of my head a good deck and be really close to what's been winning KMCs without even having to resort to looking at their lists. But in the end, I ended up looking anyway and just changing a couple cards. So Kaijudo, we still haven't had many people for locals, but I mean, with Kaijudo now hitting a 1-year anniversary, about to have our nationals, we're almost done with a KMC season, which is like regionals, and to have all that in the first year of a game is really great. So I've been talking more people into coming back into Kaijudo. Tyler's definitely coming because he's finally off his grounding, and he's going to be able to drive soon, which is cool. And we've got the other guys are coming back in too. I think his girlfriend, some of the other players aren't going to come back, but we've definitely been building again, and we're not quite to 4 players every week, which is what we need, but we're at like 2 to 3 guaranteed a week with like 5 to 6 other people who may or may not show up. So depending on the week, sometimes we get 6, sometimes we get 2, sometimes we get just me. But I'm there every week now, and it's looking up. Now, with the release of the all-foil deck, I think that not only are a lot of the cards really good, but, I mean, to have foil versions of cards is really going to make people, like, want to buy it. But we're going to end up building back to what we were before, and we're going to be going up to Champions, hopefully more often, meeting up with Aiden for play testing and stuff. Because I definitely want to help him as much as I can, because since he's going to the Nationals, I really want him to win, because basically he's the only person out of anybody who's gotten an invite that I know. So. And next year, hopefully, I will have my invite for the next Nationals, along with Tyler. So, it's been a really good year so far for Kaijudo. And I only see it going up from here. I basically told the entire story of how Kaijudo even happened. Yeah. So, I will see you guys in the next video. Check back in 2 days if you're only doing Kaijudo. If you only liked my Kaijudo stuff, then check back in 2 days. I'll have Water, Dark, Light, Nature up. And tomorrow, if you also play Yu-Gi-Oh!, I'll have a Super Starter Power Box opening. And, yeah, so I'll see you guys later. Oh, and do you like the new intro thing? Because I totally forgot to talk about that. Right? Yeah. I worked hard on it. It actually came out much better than I thought it would. And there's also an outro, too. Instead of just an intro, there's an outro. It says, like, comment, rate, subscribe, instead of gaming done awesome. So, and that runs for like 15 seconds after the video. Just as a little reminder, so I don't have to say it, because I forget to say it all the time. Because the likes actually matter. Makes me feel all happy and giddy inside, you know. So, I'll see you guys later.